Honda reliability versus BYD tech, Atkinson engines, eHEV, blade batteries, DMI hybrids, EV platforms. One is the old king of "it just works." The other is the new kid dropping insane spec sheets and undercutting everyone on price. Right now, every comment section looks like this: Honda all day, Chinese cars won't last. Or BYD is the future, Honda is stuck in the past. But the only question that really matters if you're putting your own money down is, what actually happens after 100,000 miles? I'm GearHead. I don't care who wins on brand loyalty. I care what's going on in the metal and silicone once the honeymoon ends. Engines, motors, batteries, inverters, cooling systems, and who's quietly draining your wallet at 150,000 miles. Make sure you're subscribed, because this is exactly where most people guess and where a bit of forensic thinking saves you thousands. Let's dive into Honda reliability versus BYD tech through the lens of 100,000 plus miles. Honda has decades of data in the real world: Civics, Accords, CR-Vs, Fits and Jazz, Odysseys, and more. Historically, Honda has been strong in a few areas. Their D, B, and K series engines are legendary for longevity. The modern 2-liter Atkinson-style eHEV hybrids are built on that lineage. If you do regular oil changes and don't cook them, they are remarkably tolerant. Their traditional automatics and manuals have a solid record when serviced, and suspension components, subframes, and structures generally hold up in normal climates, though rust can be an issue in salt belts, as is true for almost everyone. Where Honda stumbled was with some early to mid-2010 CVTs in Civics and Fits, which were not as durable as older automatics, and fluid neglect made it worse. Old integrated motor assist hybrids in the Civic and Insight had battery packs that degraded faster than Toyota's, and motor assist reduced significantly as packs aged. There were also engine-specific issues, like variable cylinder management on some V6s, leading to ring coking, oil consumption, and misfires. Some turbo 1.5s in certain use cases had fuel dilution in the oil if driven for short trips or entirely in the city. So Honda is not invincible. But by 2026, their newer eHEV hybrid system in the Accord, CR-V, and Civic has had enough time in the field to show it's not another integrated motor assist disaster. They still prioritize naturally aspirated, moderate-stress engines for a lot of markets, especially in hybrids. At 100,000 miles, a well-serviced modern Honda usually has a very healthy engine, minor suspension and brake wear, and may have issues if it's a CVT model with fluid neglect, a turbo model run on long intervals in nothing but city driving, or an older integrated motor assist hybrid. Broadly, Honda is predictable at 100,000 miles. You know what to look for and how to avoid the known landmines. BYD is different. They've been building EVs and hybrids for years in China, including taxis. Outside China, they're new to many people, but they are not a newborn company. Key tech pillars include the blade battery, which uses lithium iron phosphate or LFP chemistry. It has a long cycle life and is very tolerant of high cycle counts. It has a lower energy density than NMC, but is much safer thermally. BYD uses the blade battery in many EVs and DMI hybrids. Their DMI hybrid system is a series-dominant plug-in hybrid. The engine mostly acts as a generator at low and medium speeds, with direct engine drive on the highway for efficiency. There's a big emphasis on EV-like driving and very low fuel use. They also have the E-Platform 3.0 and 4.0 EV architectures, which are dedicated EV chassis. The motor, battery, and electronics are designed in-house. BYD is vertically integrated, meaning they build their own batteries, many motors, and a lot of electronics. And before I forget, I want to say something. Dealerships make money every time you don't know what you're looking at under the hood. That's why I put together the anti-dealership checklists, a simple forensic guide that shows you how to maintain, protect, and diagnose your Toyota, Honda, Ford, or Subaru without getting ripped off. Print the checklists, grab a flashlight, walk around your car or your partner's car. If you find nothing, you've lost nothing. But 10 minutes and you'll see exactly what the service advisor never points out. One thing you catch early can save you hundreds or even a $4,500 surprise repair. Links in the description and pinned comment. So what does 100,000 miles, or about 160,000 kilometers, look like for BYD? Taxi fleets using early BYD EVs and hybrids have reported some EV models crossing 300,000 plus kilometers with original batteries still delivering acceptable range. Blade packs are showing extremely low degradation in early long-term use, as LFP generally ages very gracefully. DMI hybrids are delivering crazy low fuel consumption, especially when plugged in regularly. But build quality on early BYDs varied, with trim, squeaks, and finish issues being more common than driveline failures. Software bugs and infotainment gremlins showed up more often than major hardware failures in some reports. Outside China, like in Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East, we're only getting the first wave of 100,000-mile, high-use BYDs now. Early impressions at 100,000 miles show the drivetrain is generally robust so far, with no mass motor or battery self-destruction patterns. For the battery, LFP plus BYD management equals low capacity loss under proper use. The DMI hybrids are looking good under commuter use, but very long-term data of 10-plus years is still being collected. For the chassis and interior, there are some complaints of faster interior wear and minor quality flare-ups versus Japanese and Korean established competitors. So BYD is not unproven at 100,000 miles, but it doesn't have the same global 20-year multiple market abuse record that Honda does yet. When comparing engines versus batteries, Honda has an engine-centric history and now has strong hybrid execution. Modern Atkinson-cycle hybrid engines mean lower stress than typical turbo engines. The eHEV means the engine often runs in an efficient, gentle regime, which is good for longevity. BYD has a battery-centric history, now adding engines for DMI. The Blade battery is built for long cycle life. The DMI engine often runs as an optimized generator, offering potentially good life if cooled and serviced right. At 100,000 miles for Honda eHEV hybrids, the engine is usually healthy if oil changes are respected. There are no widespread motor failures reported yet. The battery holds up for the most part, but it's still too early for 15-year data. At 100,000 miles for BYD DMI hybrids, the engine depends heavily on design, duty cycle, and service, but tends to be less stressed than a pure turbo SUV engine. The Blade battery is the star of the show. The LFP chemistry tends to be boring in the best way at 100,000 miles. Motors and electronics are mostly reliable so far, but they are regionally dependent on heat and cooling. Real talk, Honda's engine's longevity have the long-term provability edge. BYD's batteries might actually be better engineered for long life than a lot of competitors, including some Honda hybrids still on NMC. So it's not as simple as Honda good, BYD bad. It's Honda has engine longevity on lock, BYD's batteries tech is legit and possibly superior for cycle life. What I look at is not just does it run, but how it fails and how ugly those failures are. For Honda, potential failures or discomfort at 100,000 plus miles include CVT issues in non-hybrid models if the fluid is never changed, leading to shudder, slip, and early death. Old integrated motor assist hybrids can have pack degradation and reduced assist. VCM V6s can have oil consumption if not handled, and turbo 1.5s can have fuel dilution in the oil if they are used for all short trips or entirely in the city. But for the modern eHEV hybrid, the engine is a well-behaved Atkinson with modest stress. The hybrid bits are robust so far. The transmission is a simple fixed gear and clutch, which means less to go wrong than a 10-speed automatic. Most likely issues past 100,000 miles are general wear on mounts, bushings and shocks, minor hybrid battery capacity loss, and cooling system age on radiators, hoses, and pumps. These are normal used car items, not architectural-level disasters. For BYD, potential issues at 100,000 plus miles include faster cosmetic aging on the chassis and interior versus Honda and Toyota in some early models. Software and electronics can have wonkiness, screen glitches, and infotainment annoyances. The DMI engine could develop typical internal combustion engine issues like coolant leaks and oil consumption, depending on maintenance, but its role is often gentler than a traditional SUV engine. High-voltage components like motors and inverters rely heavily on BYD's cooling strategy, so poor cooling or harsh hot climate use could show up here. More real-world testing is needed past 150,000 to 200,000 miles. What about blade batteries at 100,000 miles? LFP tends to handle thousands of cycles without major drama. BYD's pack design has passed multiple torture tests in early fleet use. At 100,000 miles, a blade pack should theoretically look much healthier than an NMC pack cycled the same way. So at 100,000 miles, the biggest question for BYD isn't battery life as much as the long-term durability of motors and inverters in harsh climates, the build quality on everything around the drivetrain, and the parts and repair ecosystem in your region. If you buy new in 2026 and plan to own a car through 100,000 plus miles, total cost of ownership matters. This means routine maintenance costs, the probability and cost of big failures, and fuel and energy costs. For the Honda eHEV, routine maintenance requires oil and filter changes. Normal coolant intervals and the hybrid components are mostly hands-off under 150,000 miles if there are no warning lights. The transmission is a simple gear and clutch. Big failure risks are lower than average if you avoid known problematic engines. The hybrid system has a low failure rate so far, with a normal hybrid risk of the pack and inverter eventually failing, but not many horror stories yet. Fuel economy is excellent for real highway and city miles per gallon, with no need for charging. For a BYD DMI or EV, routine maintenance for the EV means no oil and fewer fluids, making routine upkeep cheap. For the DMI, there are engine oil changes, but a smaller usage fraction versus a typical internal combustion engine, though it still requires time-based service. Brake longevity is higher due to regen. Big failure risks for the EV include pack replacement, which is the big question long-term, beyond 10 to 15 years. For the DMI, hybrid system complexity plus the internal combustion engine means if one side goes bad out of warranty, the cost can be high, unless BYD has strong support where you live. The parts availability and diagnostic competence of local shops is still evolving outside China. Fuel and energy for the EV is cheap per mile, if electricity is reasonably priced and you can charge at home. For the DMI, it is screamingly cheap if you plug in, and still good, even if you don't, but not magic. If I'm forced to own a car from new beyond 100,000 miles and probably up to 200,000, and I can pick only on drivetrain maturity, here's how I see it. For Honda, the pros are decades of internal combustion engine durability experience. The eHEV hybrid now has enough real-world use to look solid. Service networks around the world understand Honda engines pretty well, and predictable failure patterns make it easier to preempt problems. The cons are that some older tech is still in the used pool, like bad CVTs, integrated motor assist hybrids, and VCM V6s. Some turbo engines show sensitivity to short trip use if abused, and the hybrid still has pack and inverter risk eventually, but that's normal for all hybrids. The verdict? If you want safe money beyond 100,000 miles, a well-chosen modern Honda, especially the eHEV, is a smart, conservative play. For BYD, the pros are excellent battery tech with the Blade and LFP for cycle life and safety. EVs and DMI hybrids are built around that strength. Long-term taxi service in China shows encouraging results, and they are vertically integrated, controlling batteries, motors, and much of the electronics, meaning less supplier mess. The cons are that global long-term data in rough conditions on bad roads with random owners is still limited. Repair ecosystems and parts pipelines outside China are young, and build quality, noise, vibration, and harshness, and cabin durability at 10+ years is still unproven in many markets. The verdict? If you want to bet on tech and you're okay being an early adopter in your region, BYD is not a joke, especially for EVs and DMI used as intended. But it's a riskier long-term play than Honda in 2026, purely because we don't have the same depth of multi-continent abusive use data. The real question is not just Honda versus BYD, it's how are you going to drive? What does parts and repair support look like where you live? And are you going EV or hybrid? If you're in a region where BYD has a strong dealer presence, good warranty support, and you drive a lot in the city with home charging, then a BYD EV or DMI hybrid can be an excellent choice, even long-term. If you're somewhere with limited BYD support, few independent shops familiar with their systems, and you just want a car you can give basic fluids and filters and ignore, then a Honda, especially a modern eHEV, is a more rational buy past 100,000 miles. Right now, in 2026, Honda equals proven conservative reliability with maturing hybrids. BYD equals very strong tech, especially the battery, but global long-term reliability is still being written. Neither is automatically good or bad. The brutal truth? If you buy Honda, you're buying a safe, mostly known curve. If you buy BYD, you're buying a smart architecture and tech with more upside, but also more unknowns beyond the first 100 to 150,000 miles, unless your local ecosystem is ready for it. If you want me to break down a specific matchup, like the BYD Kin Plus DMI versus the Honda Accord hybrid, or the BYD Song versus the CR-V hybrid, drop it in the comments and make sure you're subscribed. I'm GearHead. Every badge has a story, but the miles tell the truth. And together, we're going to keep decoding which stories actually end well when the odometer hits 6 digits and keeps climbing.